Welcome to The Planted Runner. This is Coach Claire Bartholic, and this is the PR Training Lab. We've been on a little break for a couple of weeks, and now we're back with fresh bonus episodes. And if this is the first time you're joining us, what we do here is I've run a contest where people apply to have me write their running plan, live recorded on the Planted Runner podcast. So you get to see what I do, why I make the decisions that I do when I'm writing plans for runners. And some lucky winners get to have a free training plan created here live. Today is a really exciting one. We are doing Adrian, who is training for the Sydney Marathon. I'll get into that in just a bit. But if you would like to enter to win your own free custom training plan created by me live here on the Planted Runner podcast, all you have to do is enter at theplantedrunner.com/PR labs. And before you do that, go ahead and write an Apple podcast review, and you might be chosen to get your plan written. That's theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. All right, we are going to get started here with Adrian. He is 67 years old. He's actually going to have a birthday 5 days after the Sydney Marathon. So, what's special about Sydney and what's special about Sydney this year is that Sydney is not yet a world marathon major, but it is going to be soon. And they have chosen it this year to be the venue for the age group world championships. So, fun fact, I have coached someone who actually won the age group marathon world championship a couple years ago with a 2:27 in his 50s. So that was really thrilling for me. So this is fun to help another Masters runner hopefully get close to the podium for this. So, yes, 67 years old. Let's see what Adrian is trying to do in Sydney. So, he says that he wants to run Sydney in 3 hours and 15 minutes. Okay, that's super fast. I don't care how old you are. But at 67, almost 68, that is incredibly fast. So let's see what else. And I should say that Adrian did email me some extra information when I told him that I'd be doing this for him. So I will be looking at that as well and taking in the extra details that he has sent me to help create his plan today. So what he has told me is that he started running relatively late in life at age 46, and he has raced 35 marathons in 22 years. He's had no real injuries, but he did have a knee injury that he's worked through, but thankfully he's feeling good now. He has been training consistently over the years, and since his knee injury, he does strength training, and he's explained a few of the workouts that he usually does. Adrian is Canadian, and he runs with a running club, which is called the Rockies in Thornhill, which is north of Toronto. He runs 3 times a week with them. So I'm a big fan of running groups. If you can run in person with other people, it, for me personally, absolutely changed my running. But what's great about it is whenever you're running with other people, it lowers your perception of effort. This has been scientifically proven, and you just feel better when you're running with others. So if you're going to run hard, it's a lot better to suffer with friends than to go at it alone. And it also helps you from having sort of ruminating thoughts when you're running because you're distracted with other people. So I highly encourage you to run with a group if you can. All right. So, of course, he's Canadian. We're going to be doing this in kilometers. I've got my cheat sheet here so I can translate some of these numbers into miles for my American listeners. So, let's see. What is your recent race time? So Boston in April 23, not this year, was a 3:23. That's impressive. And he did Comrades Ultra last year as well, which is 88 kilometers in 8:46. So I don't know how that translates. So Comrades is a really famous ultra marathon. They run it in one direction one year and they switch directions the other year. So I don't know which way. One is more uphill, one is more downhill. But usually ultras are a bit beyond my scope, but I'm sure that that was a tough race. All right. How many kilometers does Adrian run per week? He says 60 to 70, which is in miles 37 to 43. So that's a very healthy amount of mileage for most marathoners, especially at this point. So we are in July as I'm recording this, and Sydney will be September 15th. So that's about 2 months away at this point. So hopefully he is still training well for this without waiting for this plan. And I'm going to pop up on screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, a picture of what the race course or the elevation profile of Sydney looks like. It is rolling hills, but it's not very steep at all. It's point to point. You'll be on roads, going over bridges. So it is not super, super flat, but the elevation gain and loss is not very great either. So it's considered a fast course, but some of the issues with Sydney is that it can be a little warm. The average race temperature over the last couple of years is in the low 80s. So in Celsius, that's about 27 degrees. So it is warm for racing. So I'd say that is probably the mitigating factor more than the course itself. All right, let's get back to Adrian. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage you've ever run, and how long ago was that? He said 110 kilometers, May last year. So that's when he was training for Boston. That's about 68 miles. So for someone who is competitive and is racing at the faster ends, they usually can handle more mileage because it's less time on their feet. They're getting from point A to point B a little bit faster. And so it's typically okay to be able to do more mileage, but everybody is different. And especially as you age, things can get a little different as well. You might have to do fewer miles, more cross training. Some can handle it, some can't. But it sounds like Adrian's been handling it well, although, you know, he did have that injury, which he is working back from. So another thing I want to say right now, if you are watching this on YouTube, is that it's getting a little dark in here. There is a storm coming through, and this is the kind of show that I'm not doing all the bells and whistles and tons of editing for. So we're just going to go right through. If you're listening to this and you hear some rain or thunder, that is why. And my light also changed too. So I look a little different. And there's the thunder. So let's get that back to normal. And we're just going to keep rolling on through. If it does seem like it's really starting to be distracting, I might take a break and come back when the storm's over. But hey, we're just going to roll with it now. All right. What days of the week does Adrian run? He says every day except for Friday and Sunday. Okay, so that is actually a really good spread of mileage. If he is running, 60 miles over 5 days, that's probably pretty healthy spread of mileage. We wouldn't want to see him only running, let's say, 3 days a week, and he's running 70 miles or 110 kilometers. We want that spread out relatively evenly throughout the week. Of course, you're going to have a long run that's longer, so your daily runs are going to be shorter. What day of the week does he prefer to do the long run? He says Saturday. How long is his average or most recent run? He says 20K, but I believe this, when he filled out this form, this was done about a month ago or so. So he has bumped up to about 26K for now. So he's in the 16, 17 mile range right now, which is just fine 2 months out from the race. What pace would you say is a very easy effort, relaxed pace for an average run? So, the reason I ask this is to see if the runner is running their easy days too fast, because that is one of the most common things that untrained runners do is they run their easy runs way too fast. It is not aerobic. It ends up being too hard, and you basically steal your speed from speed days when you're using it on your easy days. You need a recovery day from your recovery day. So I want to make sure that he's doing it right. So his easy pace is about 540 per kilometer. That's 907 per mile, or minutes per mile, I should say. And that is actually just fine for a 320 marathoner. So it's probably on the faster end of his easy range, but that is just fine considering his speed and ability. But as I always say, it is not about how fast you run on your easy days, it's or slow. It's about your effort. So we want to make your easy runs so easy that you could hold a conversation just like I am now. We want to make sure that we can talk, that we are not huffing and puffing, that it's nice and relaxed. So he's right on target with that. Maybe he wants to go just a touch slower on some of those really tough days to make sure that it stays easy. All right, which day of the week do you prefer to run your speed day? He says Tuesdays and Thursdays. Okay, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I like that for people who run long on Sundays, but we can see how that goes. Which day of the week do you take a full rest day? So he takes a rest day on Sunday. So we can work with that. A lot of Saturday runners, long runners, I should say, they don't want to run fast on a Monday. I get it. And especially if you're running with a group, most speed days are Tuesday, Thursday. That's just a really common speed day. So that's what most groups will do. So we definitely can work with that. What are your favorite kinds of running workouts? He likes the long run, fast finish. Okay, this is a great marathon specific workout. So you'll do a long run. Let's say it's 25 kilometers or about 16 miles or 18 miles, something like that. You're going to run the first part of it easy, your normal, easy, relaxed pace. And then about 3 miles from the end, or I should say about 4 miles from the end, you'll do 3 miles or 5K at a faster pace. And there can be a whole range of faster paces. It might be marathon pace. It might be a little bit faster. Maybe it's half marathon pace. You do that for 5 kilometers or 3 miles just to teach your legs that you can do hard things and you can run fast on tired legs. What it does is it simulates a longer, more difficult run by using speed instead of distance at the end of your run. So it is a great run to incorporate into your long runs. Not every single week. You don't want to be doing it every single time you run long, but you could be doing it once or twice a month, depending on what other kinds of long runs. Most of your long runs should just be long runs. No speed, nothing but good aerobic work and time on your feet. But occasionally, you're going to want to add in some spice to those long runs just to make it a little bit harder and a little bit more marathon specific. What are your least favorite kinds of running workouts, or what do you struggle with most on your runs? He says lactic threshold tempo. Ooh, okay. Well, this is one that, maybe you should be scared of. It is a challenging one. So, your lactate threshold, that is basically the invisible line between a medium effort and a hard effort. It's where you stop really using your aerobic system as the primary system and it starts tipping into the anaerobic system, meaning without oxygen. Once you cross that threshold, that lactic threshold line, your time on your feet is going to be over very, very soon unless you slow down. The reason it's called lactic threshold or lactate threshold is what it's actually appropriately called, is because the lactate in your blood is rising so rapidly that you can no longer process it as fuel. If you stay right underneath that line, you teach your body that, hey, yes, this is hard, but instead of flooding my system with something that feels like a burning poison, I'm going to turn this substance into fuel that is actually going to help power your muscles. So the lactate threshold tempo is a very powerful run. It's not something, again, you want to be doing every day or every week, but it's gotten a lot of attention lately, especially with Norwegian trainers or Norwegian runners like Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who is a middle distance runner who does a lot of lactate threshold training. So if you're interested in that, I have done a podcast all about tempos and what they mean, and I discuss that. So check that one out if you want to get into more detail. But in Adrian's email, he also talked about some of the runs that he typically does with his running club. He says he does intervals on Tuesdays, which could be a 6 times 1K. So he does intervals of 1,000 meters at 4:05 plus 2 intervals of 400 meters at 3:30 pace with 3-minute breaks. Okay, so if he's doing that, hopefully he's not doing the same workout every single week. You do want to switch it up and do different kinds of workouts to stress different kinds of systems. But at those paces that he is talking about, this is VO2 max. This is faster than 5K pace. This is an unsustainable pace at more than a kilometer or more than a lap and a half around the track. So this is speedy stuff. But he's also getting a 3-minute break, which is enough time to be able to calm down, get your breath back, bring your heart rate down just a little bit so that you can repeat it the same way. So when we are doing very high end speed work, in order to be able to repeat that interval the same way at the end as we do at the beginning, we need to have long breaks with full rest, no jogging, not even walking in most cases. If you really want to get your breath back, you should be standing and breathing, maybe getting a drink of water so that you can repeat it over again. So VO2 max workouts like this are great for polishing up your high-end speed. But once we get into marathon training, they only have limited value. We can still use them. We can still do them, but we're going to do them rarely. And we're going to do them more to the beginning of our marathon cycle. The reason is it's not very specific to the marathon. There's no way that he is running 4:05 per kilometer pace for the marathon. What he needs to teach himself how to do is run stamina. So he does that as well. On Thursday, he does more of a tempo or race pace, which his race pace is 4:45 per kilometer, which translated into miles is 7:37 per mile. So he practices marathon pace once a week, or that's just a typical week. So hopefully he's switching it up. So you do want to practice marathon pace, obviously, when you're training for a marathon, but you also want to practice a little bit faster than that. The reason is because it simulates a longer workout. So we can use speed to simulate distance, right? So we don't want to be running 26 miles in training for the marathon or 42 kilometers. We want to be training ourselves to handle a similar effort. And how we do that is we can do some pre-fatigue, which means we would do a steady run before the long run. I've talked about that many times. Or we can use speed strategically to simulate a longer workout. So sounds like he is doing some great things with his running. I just hope that he mixes it up, and he is not saying that he is doing these exact workouts every week. He also says that he races a 5K time trial the first Tuesday of the month. So he's running a 5K once a month in marathon training. And honestly, that's not the worst idea. It really isn't. And a lot of people say, well, what are you doing a bunch of 5Ks in the middle of marathon training? Well, the 5K or 3.1 miles is short enough that it's an actual workout. So unless he is going all out, really, really exhausting himself, it is kind of a good workout that stresses higher speed, which again, you don't need directly. But when you run at faster speeds, you teach your body how to run fast, and that will translate through all the speeds that you do. So, again, as long as you're doing a variety of speed work that gets more specific to the race you're training for as you get closer to the race you're training for, doing a variety of workouts in the right dose can be really, really helpful. All right. What kinds of I don't know if you can hear the thunder, but it stopped raining but it's still thundering, but hopefully it's brightening back up around here. So, what kind of non-running physical activities or cross training does Adrian do? He does strength work 4 times a week, an hour each. Okay. Spinning classes, and he swims occasionally. So an hour of strength work 4 times a week, 4 hours a week, that is definitely on the high end. So if he's been doing this for years and years and he no longer feels sore and this works into his training very well, this could be where he is at, where his level is at. He's obviously very, very fast runner. So I'm not going to say that he is doing too much. I would say for most intermediate runners, that would be far too much. I don't know exactly what he is doing for his strength work, if he is lifting, super, super heavy, or if he's going lighter and or using, mobility exercises. I don't know exactly what he is doing for his strength, but if it's not broken, I'm not going to fix it, right? If it's working for him, if he is not too tired from his strength work to run well, if he's still hitting his paces, still improving, the strength work is going to be just fine. I would say you don't want to be doing the same kind of strength work you were doing in between cycles during a marathon cycle. You do want to dial that back so you can focus more of your body's energy towards running well. So, as long as this is a little bit less than what he does when he's in a non marathon cycle, I would say it's just fine. But if he is feeling like it is overwhelming, I would say cut that back and run more instead with your time. And if he can't run more, if the running is just a little too much pounding, then I would say use your time to keep boosting that aerobic system. Go ahead and take that swim and spinning class. Maybe that is something that you could do instead. But again, I don't know if he's having any issues with his current training schedule or not. But that is just something that I will see from people who are, let's face it, type A overachievers. We want to do great at our runs. We want to do great in the gym. We want to do our best everywhere in life. And when we get specific about a goal, we need to get specific. So we have to choose our priorities if we really want to get good at the one that we're most interested in. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? He says, avoiding sweets. Well, with as much as Adrian trains, I'm not sure that that's really a problem. So obviously, I don't know how many sweets he is eating. I don't know if he is eating, birthday cake every meal. I mean, I don't know what exactly that means, avoiding sweets, but for marathon runners who are running the amount of mileage that he is doing with the strength training, with the cross training, he needs to get in his calories. So I'm going to just assume that he's eating a relatively healthy diet. And actually, as I look at his email, he says, I eat healthy most of the time, but sweets and wine are my weaknesses. Okay, well, wine, I know, and that's not going to help your training in any way whatsoever. One glass of wine, not going to hurt you, but it again, it's all about priorities. If the wine keeps you up at night, robs you of your sleep, if it makes you cranky, then yes, it's definitely affecting you in the negative. On the other hand, if a glass of wine really is one of your favorite times of day and it's something that you don't want to give up because it actually brings something to your life, I would say, again, what are your priorities? You do not have to completely be abstinent from alcohol to be a great runner. But a lot of runners, especially as we get older, are making that choice because they find that it really does help them more than it hurts them to let go. I would say when it comes to alcohol, if you are serious about your running and you're serious about your event coming up, I would say abstain for sure the last week before your marathon. I think that's incredibly helpful from a sleep point of view, a dehydration point of view, a mental point of view. It gets you mentally ready for what you're about to do. And if you want to take it to the next level, abstain for 30 days before your marathon. And then, of course, you could always just quit drinking altogether. It's up to you. A little bit is probably not a big deal if it brings something to your life. But if you're writing it down that it is a weakness of yours, it sounds like you understand that it might be an issue. So just take a look at that. It's not the end of the world, I would say. Sweets, again, we need carbohydrate. We need to replenish our glycogen stores. You don't need to eat absolutely perfect, whole foods, plant based, or any other diet that you're on. You do not have to be absolutely perfect. And in fact, if you have trouble getting in your calories because you're depleting your glycogen stores so much and you're not hungry after a run, sweets are good. So no problem with sweets if you eat them before your run. If you're always eating sweets after your run, again, not the best, but it's really not the worst, especially if you're an athlete. So aim for whole foods, try to be healthy 80-90% of the time if you can. And I would say don't worry about the other 10%, but keep it to about 10%. And I think you'll be just fine. All right. I asked him next, what are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? And Adrian wrote, I figured out mental strategies for each type of race over the years. Well, that is awesome. That's amazing. I wish he would share a little more. I am always looking out for more mental strategies. As you know, on the podcast, I do the mental strength minute at the end of every episode. So I love hearing new tips and tricks. But yeah, we'll have to have Adrian chime in and let us know what those are. What are you hoping to learn or gain in this training cycle? He says he'd like to combine running, strength, cross training, and mobility in a coherent plan. Well, that is definitely what I will do for him. I will give him a plan that includes all of that in a way that makes sense for his lifestyle and for his ability. So he is at the higher end of speed and ability, definitely a very advanced runner. So I would give him some things that I wouldn't give just a runner who is on their first or second marathon. He will get more advanced everything, more advanced running. The one thing that I would say is because he has such a great, he is in a group that he likes a lot. I've talked about this before. What do you do when your group is running a different workout than what your coach has scheduled? So, for the most part, you can stick with what the group is doing as long as it's relatively similar to what your coach has assigned you. But the more specific the workout is to the race you're doing, the closer you are to the race that you're doing, you want to stay specific. So if you are 3 weeks away from your marathon and you're doing VO2 max, you're doing 5K stuff, that's not specific to the marathon. You really need to be sharpening your skills for the race that you are training for. But 3 months out, yeah, go ahead, do it. Run with friends. It's an absolute social boost. It is, you run faster, you feel better when you're doing it with other people. So try to keep the group work up as much as you can. But in the let's say 6 weeks before the marathon, you definitely want to only be doing the workouts that your marathon coach has assigned. So maybe your group will change their workouts to be more marathon specific if they have a lot of marathoners in their group. So just communicate with them and with your coach to see which makes the most sense for you. And finally, the last question that I asked Adrian is anything else you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? And he says, I'm willing to work 10 to 15 hours a week for it. So that's a lot of training. That is definitely a lot of training. Make sure that it's not just training that you're doing. Make sure you're getting all the sleep that you need. You're doing some mobility work. You can't, I mean, obviously, some people run 15 hours a week. That's a lot, but you have to find the balance between training and overtraining. Rest and recovery are just as important as the training itself. That's actually when we grow, is when we rest. So, as long as he has a good balance, there is a point where more is not more. There is a point where more will take away. So, as long as he's feeling good and he's feeling healthy, refreshed, relaxed, he enters his speed day feeling good and not tired, then those are good signs that he could add a little bit more if he wanted to. And as long as you're handling the training well, you can bump things up. All right. Well, that is it for Adrian. I hope he does really well in Sydney and gets a spot in the marathon World Age Group Championships. Really exciting. And if you want to be considered for one of these shows in the future, go ahead and first write an Apple Podcast review of the show, and then go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. That's PRLAB. You can also follow along with the questions that I ask everyone for the show. They will be in the show notes, and there'll be links to all of this good stuff. All right, that is it for me for today. Have a good run today.